Hello, and welcome to episode number 70 of the Board Game Barrage podcast, a podcast about board games, the latest hotness, and how to scumbag your friends even when you're winning.
Oh my God.
If you're Kellen.
Oh my God. I'm physically uncomfortable.
This is your co-host, Christina, the Blue Tank, also known as the Board Game Barrage intern, accountant, and the brains behind everything Kellen says.
The brains?
The brains. As always, with me are my co-hosts, Kellen the Red Tank, Neelan the Orange Tank, and Mark the Green Tank. How's it going, guys?
Good.
It's tough to know what to say.
Right.
Yeah, this is business as usual, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Standard
Another
opening. No
regular
reason
episode of the podcast?
Yeah. 4 of us are here,
Yeah.
as always.
We've gathered the 4 of us together again.
What's after a trio? You know, like the...
Quattro?
Yeah, is that what it is?
No.
Quartet.
Oh, it's the quartet of voices. One perhaps a bit higher than all the others.
Sorry about that. My voice is breaking.
Okay, just jumping in here. This is the Red Tank, the voice that you all know and love. Today, we have a special 4th chair with us, Christina, the Blue Tank. And today's featured topic is on the Spiel des Jahres nominees and the Kennerspiel nominees. If you're not familiar, this is sort of like the Oscars of board games. Some board games have been nominated, and we want to give you our hot takes on those games. And they are going to be quite hot, as Wingspan is one of them.
That's right.
But before we do that, we would like to talk about what we've been playing. And today, we played... Kellen, I'll let you take it away from here.
The Gods War.
Glorantha.
Glorantha, the Gods War, a Sandy Peterson game.
A Sandy Peterson game. I have been saying this for like the last month.
It's all I have heard for the last month.
The Gods
Do
War.
they know I'm your girlfriend?
I think we've said your name enough that it's out there.
He opened the box and he was as gleeful as a 5-year-old on Christmas morning. Never seen him like this.
He took pictures.
They took pictures. For the next 20 minutes, he kept saying, Glorantha, the Gods War, a Sandy Peterson game. Glorantha, the Gods War, a Sandy Peterson game. The Gods War, a Sandy Peterson game.
All right, so this is Christina, and as one of our listeners met her, I think the thing she first said was, "Wow, you must have thick skin to date Kellen."
Confirmed.
Christina actually made a brief appearance on one of our videos in our Lords of Hellas playthrough.
Oh yeah, coming home.
It's sort of like an Easter egg.
Yeah, that's true. I was not warned about that.
So we want to talk first about Glorantha, the Gods War, a Sandy Peterson game. This, as you may know from listening to past episodes of the podcast, is perhaps the game I have been most excited about for the last at least year. Glorantha is designed by the same person who made Cthulhu Wars. In many instances, it's basically talked about in it's Cthulhu Wars 1.5 edition. I have no love for the Cthulhu mythos. I have no love for the Glorantha mythos. I don't even know what the Glorantha mythos is. And I'm not sure any of us know after having completed a 4-hour game of Glorantha, the Gods War, a Sandy Peterson game. But what you're doing is there are unique asymmetric factions. There are 4 in the base box. There are 4 in the expansion. So we had 8 races to choose from. This is a victory point game, a Euro Ameritrash hybrid, where you are rushing to complete 6 different objectives that only you have, and those unlock unique spell books. But what's cool is you can unlock any spell in any order you want, allowing different viable build paths to victory. There's a very strict action point system. You take one action, and then the next player takes an action until you run out of action points. Some of the early rounds in games like Cthulhu Wars, like Glorantha, the Gods War, feel similar to the early mid-game in a game of like StarCraft, where there is almost a opening that you want to do unless someone else does another opening, and then as the game goes, the game opens up into the mid and late game. This is a hot take on Glorantha, the Gods War, a Sandy Peterson game, only because we've only just completed the first game, and the reason that we have Christina here with us today is that this is her favorite type of game.
That she always wins.
A fighty game, and not to bury the lead, but she did win this time because Mark has no soul.
I mean, that's been established, so I've got no retort to that.
To start, I will be playing Glorantha the Gods War at least 3 more times before really offering a, is it better than Cthulhu Wars? What do you guys and girl think of Glorantha the Gods War, a Sandy Peterson game?
I think we'll all agree that this is a weird one to talk about, especially after that first game, because it was a weird game. And that's not to say Glorantha is a weird game, but we all had a weird game of it, where the end sort of trickled out in a weird way that became kind of mathy and kingmakey. Like, I've never seen Mark sort of like clutch his head in his hands and with so much frustration and deliberation. It's like, I don't even know what to do. Like, what is the right thing to do? Because it kind of boiled down to the situation where Kellen and Christina were in contention for the win, but to some extent, anyone might have taken. We thought Mark might have been close to taking at that point, but Mark's choices are, if I attack Kellen, then Christina wins. If I attack Christina, Kellen wins. And that's obviously an aggravating situation to be in. Probably typical of a lot of these games, but for whatever reason, because of the way the victory point system works, kind of felt like, okay, if I deny this many victory points, then I'm spending my action points to do that, which means I would be able to gain this many victory points. It became very, very mathy in a way that surprised me, even in a way that Cthulhu Wars doesn't. So you get these hidden victory points chits that are secret in Cthulhu Wars, and that system is a little bit different in Glorantha, and it kind of just felt like there wasn't as much unpredictability towards the end as Cthulhu Wars. Definitely a very similar sort of game. You're building up big, chunky units. One of the key differences is, instead of these gates that you're putting on the board, you have buildings that go through multiple stages. So it kind of felt a little bit like, once you've upgraded the building, you had to protect it. You can spread out your buildings easier across the map, so it kind of becomes more about buildings are supposed to be getting out across the map a lot quicker, and you're sort of moving between the more important of them and protecting them, which is not something that we all necessarily did either in our first game, which again made it a little bit weird. It's super hard for me to gauge this game at this point, having only played it once. If you want my super, super hot take, I've had 3 or 4 really good games of Cthulhu Wars and 1 weird game of Glorantha. So yeah, I think the ball is still in Glorantha's court to like prove itself.
Yeah, I feel like this is a game where that first game is always going to be weird. So for my hot take, I don't really subtract any points to the game for being odd in its first play, and us maybe playing in a way that made things mathy. It's hard to tell. I get the feeling like it might, no matter what, end up a little mathy at the end. I'm not sure. Maybe your point about the bigger swing with the hidden points plays into that. And for as frustrated as I appeared to be, and sort of was toward the end of the game, I was very excited about the opportunity to play it again. I don't know. It's hard to compare it to Cthulhu Wars in terms of ranking, but I felt like I could get my arms around this game more after my first time than Cthulhu Wars. I think that might be a function of this game being a little less swingy to me. There were definitely very strong asymmetric powers, but Cthulhu Wars, for whatever reason, felt more game breaky to me.
I think there were more active powers in Cthulhu Wars than this, where these were a little bit more of passive effects that you were unlocking versus like, I'm going to take my 4 unique faction actions that you guys can't do.
Right.
And I think that makes it a little easier to grasp, perhaps.
Yeah.
I think also having the base of Cthulhu Wars made this much easier to grasp, because a lot of the rules were somewhat similar. So it was like your base understanding of the game was already there, and then you just had to kind of learn these other powers and the slight differences.
Right.
So that helped too. But I think the Chaos faction was as crazy as any Cthulhu faction, whereas the other 3 felt less insane, maybe.
So I played a faction called Chaos Callan, or Callan.
Chaos
Yes,
Callan.
Callan Allen.
Allen. And the Chaos faction, there is a unique point in the game, about a third of the way through the game, where every other player has to band up against Chaos and close the rift. So they're all sacrificing units and power in order to try to stop this big cataclysmic event from happening. But they can turn on each other and make one player contribute way more than them. So there's a lot of diplomacy, a lot of arguing, a lot of discussion. These guys played it fairly straight, and it turned into a sort of everyone versus Kellen, which is common.
I just think 9 times out of 10, that's how it's going to be played. If not
I
more than
agree.
that. I think
Yeah.
maybe like 19 out of 20 times, that's the way to play it. Because we talked about this during the game. Like, if you turn traitor there, if you say one thing and do another, you're making yourself a target. You're also, the function of paying to block the Chaos character and closing the rift in that instance is also to stop this bleed that occurs round to round. And I just feel like turning traitor there makes yourself a target, and you're going to be bleeding more and more per round.
Yeah, Kellen and I spoke briefly afterwards about just the hypothetical, right? As the person that was in maybe the weakest position of the three of us, myself, Mark, and Christina, if I had been the one to be like, okay, no, psych, I'm actually contributing, 1 power or 0 power, and that gives me substantially better power for that round versus the two of you. But then I agree, I just don't know how I would capitalize on a way that just wouldn't feel like, okay, now you're both coming at me or not trusting me for the remainder of the game. It would have to be a substantial boost to my board position to be worthwhile.
Right.
So let's ask the hot question then, and we don't have to do Nealon's dumb sound effects. But so, Mark, you were in the Kingmaker position.
Yeah.
Had Christina betrayed you in one of the Chaos Rift rounds, had spent 1 instead of the 6 that you had spent,
Right.
would that have been enough in your mind that you would have thrown the game to me at the very
To
end?
be clear, Mark attacked me, and I still won.
Okay, but that you're ruining the hot question. But do you understand that?
Yeah.
Because you're saying that the betrayal is 19 out of 20. No one would do that for fear of retaliation.
Yes.
That's the level of retaliation that you're talking about. Yeah. In the 11th hour, you would strike the dagger into Christina's heart.
If the situation was exactly the same, but she had betrayed earlier, I could see myself leading toward you.
Yeah. Interesting. Christina, what is your hot take on the Gods War? Which one should we keep in the apartment? Because I know
that's an interesting question.
we can't keep all those boxes.
I have to choose now? This is a lot of pressure.
Choose now.
So we're all about hot takes.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm not all about hot takes.
Yeah, obviously you would need more plays to actually make that decision.
I mean, I love Cthulhu Wars.
Yep.
And I would play that 10 more times and still be learning new things and having different experiences every single time.
Guess what's coming next Friday? More factions for Cthulhu Wars.
Do we have space for that?
Sandy
Because we
Peterson
might
game.
not.
I don't know that I have ever played a game with a shared framework that feels close to 80% the same game with 20% deviation in that way. I do not believe that anyone should own Cthulhu Wars and the Gods War unless you are crazy like me and this is a top 5 game to have.
But did it feel different enough to you that you, being you, loving both, would keep both?
Yeah.
No. It's essentially
Really?
like, will the Gods War replace Cthulhu Wars as my number 4 favorite game of all time?
There's no room for both of them.
No. Perhaps in a collection of infinite space. There's not enough space in my mind for both of them.
Especially for such a long game. I mean, it's not a crazy long game, but for a game that is going to be like a afternoon game, it's not like you could play both of them even in a same week, much less the same day.
Right, and especially for a game that gets more rewarding the more you play it, as you diversify and try different factions, the idea of splitting your time between both feels like especially absurd.
I mean, I think I'm in the unique position of someone who has disposable income, loves board games, loves Cthulhu Wars, that I will hold on to both of them perhaps for a year and then make that hot take. Well, it won't be hot anymore.
It'd be very cold.
Determination. But on the whole, it feels like Cthulhu Wars is perhaps a smidgen more fun, which is obviously a word that you can't prove out. And the Gods War feels a bit more diplomatic, a bit more negotiation, and a bit more refined.
Yeah, that strikes me as accurate, yeah.
One mechanism that I think is super fun and worth discussing is every round, after the 2/3 of the way through the game, there is a phase called the Great Compromise, where someone becomes a judge of the table and rewards players with 4 victory points for themselves, 3 victory points for another player, 2 for one player, and then 1 for whoever they feel like. This mechanism is just a catch-up mechanism, similar to Cthulhu Wars' Doom phase, but it's very, very funny and very unique catch-up mechanism that I felt like kept us all in contention. I felt ganged up on. I played the better game than Christina did, certainly, but through losing every great compromise.
I mean, the nature of those 4 factions was that you would be ganged up on. There was no...
Well, who can say?
So you had to be the one against all of us, and out of all of us, I played the best.
There is this interesting thing that Christina raised during the game, which is that almost feels like the function of the rift is to pit the other players against faction, even if it's just psychologically, right? It's not necessarily mechanically necessary to do that, but it just feel like, well, screw you, we're taking you down because this thing is sucking all of our power.
We let Christina win because Mark got sweet-talked. Christina was playing the Sky faction,
I was the sky
and you had this giant sun figure.
sun god.
With a mustache.
He was an ugly sun god,
And
but
he
he
was-
was the sun god.
He was stuck in hell, and someone had to let him out. He had to have permission
Mark and I
to
had an
come out.
alliance
And Mark is like, oh, yeah,
based
I'll
on
go to hell.
strategic negotiations.
How did that work out for you, Mark?
I brought Mark to hell, and he liked it.
It just felt like the right play to me. I guess I didn't see the ramifications of having her sun god out as being detrimental, but it didn't seem clear to me. It didn't seem like a unstoppable force. I don't think it necessarily was when it came out, but
I think that alliances from previous games of Blood Rage, Rising Sun,
Breakbeat,
Comet are coming back out, and it's deeply unfortunate and problematic to the nature of playing board games and the shared commitment we all made when we shook hands.
It's possible you just need to be better at making alliances as part of your gameplay.
sort of a get good situation for you.
Mark has admitted out loud that if anyone has to lose, it must be Kellen.
Sure. Okay.
That's a fact.
Yeah, I'll stay with that. Yeah.
I think actually you having the chaos role was actually double unfortunate for you because even without you having that type of role, I mean, yes, we do gang up on you because we each have our own reasons for not wanting you to win.
What's your reason?
No, they're pretty much all the same reason for not wanting you to win.
What's that reason?
No, we all have the same reason. I agree with Neelan. And regardless, in any game, you do have to, fight a little harder to get the alliance, which you do sometimes if it makes sense, if the price is right. And this just heightened that because chaos pitted us against you even more than we already are.
I didn't. I didn't choose chaos. Chaos chose me.
Before you even opened the box, you chose chaos for our first game.
I'm not sure what you're getting at. So that's going to do it for our discussion on the God's War. Well, that's going to do it for our discussion on Glorantha, the God's War, a Sandy Peterson game, a Race for the Galaxy board game. Oh, no, okay. That's going to do it for Glorantha, the God's War, a Sandy Peterson game. But rest assured, we will be playing it more. I'm so excited. I tried to get them to play it more, but they wanted to record the stupid podcast. I wanted to run it back. We already had it out on the table. Christina,
Yes.
before you leave us, any hot takes, any advice, any wisdom that you might impart on the BGB audience?
Don't listen to them.
What?
Run.
Well, just run as fast as you can. Mostly Kellen, though. You can't believe anything he says.
What? All right. Well, I think this is when we're going to take your mic away from you.
Well, before you go, as we do with all our guests, you have to do your own version of Neelan's hot question.
I don't think I
We
can.
do that for all our guests. Yeah, we have to. It's obligatory.
Who was the last guest? How did they
Never
do?
mind that. You just it's part of the
Stop asking.
part of what you signed when you started recording.
Let's have a hard question.
That was incredible. That was perfect.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it ranks second. I think it's Neelan's still first. You've got second, but you've outshined Kellen.
Definitely better than Kellen.
Yeah, exactly.
You took my worst take. This joke is not funny.
That was every take.
That was actually spliced together your best parts of every take.
Okay, bye.
Wait, I didn't get to think of a funny words of wisdom about you guys. I didn't plan that. What were my other good zingers? I don't even know now.
It's tough when you're live
You're live
It
on
is
the air.
tough.
and
When
you're burning
when
games.
you're burning games and the live studio audience is staring at you with big doe eyes and you just can't think of what to say. All right. Well, it was nice meeting all of you.
Nice meeting you too.
Well, thank you for being the first official guest of the Board Game Barrage podcast.
I will be waiting for my blue hoodie and my blue plushie tank. Have you told them about the plushie?
I don't think they know about the plushie.
We have a Tanky plushie. His name is Tanky.
You know that a blue tank will just fit into the background. Like you can't see it.
Have you ever seen Shades of Blue in the
what
ocean?
if the blue tank was there the entire time, but camouflaged?
Oh, yeah.
The brain.
brains.
Just in the background.
Yeah. If you squint.
Wow.
I am Board Game Bros.
All right. Get the hell out. We're done with you.
Okay, bye.
All right. Now that distraction is behind us, Neelan, what have you been playing?
Kellen and I also played Corinth, which is a roll and write game that was just released, or was on the verge of being released by Days of Wonder. The theme is this sort of very vague trading and Mediterranean type thing where you're getting goats, you're getting gold, you're getting either these jars, silk, you're getting these goods, and as you would expect, you're rolling dice, you're choosing a selection of dice, and then whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. The way this breaks down is every person's turn, they will roll all of these 9 dice. They can, if they want to, spend gold to sort of roll these yellow dice, which will give them a unique benefit, but not anyone else that round. So you roll your 9 dice and you sort of stack them on this table. The highest dice will go to the top, which is the action that would get you gold. And then in order from lowest to highest, you sort of build up the other actions. So at the bottom is goats, then the other trade goods, all the way up to whatever the best trade good is. I forget what it was. And then on your turn, having rolled the dice on your turn, and if you roll the dice, you'll be the first player, you'll pick one of those actions, remove all the dice, and get the action at that strength equal to the number of dice that were in that section. So for example, if someone had rolled 4 6s and this becomes the top action, if I took the gold action, I'm getting 4 gold for that turn. Then at the end of your turn, there are ways to spend your goats and gold. So there are 4 structures you can build, and these are going to give you different benefits, either points or ways to get more gold or ways to get more goods. The other 3 actions are ways to get goods. If you take one of those, you'll get that many goods, which are building up these blocks, and if you fill a block, you get points. There's another system that involves moving around this track. That's another way to get golds and goods. But there are about 4 different ways, basically, to acquire points over the course of the game. You make your choice, goes to the next player, and so on until you finish the round. Then the next player rolls and you continue. So, Kellen, quick take on Corinth.
I mean, it's not going to change anyone's mind about roll and writes. My quick positive about it was that you really had to specialize. It wasn't a thing where everyone was going to get most points from every section by the end of the game. You really had to say, I'm going to try for the cloth. And maybe one other thing that you could specialize in. And there were bonuses for being the first to do things. So in a sense, if you look at a game like Welcome To and say, well, there's this small area of interaction, Corinth felt immediately more interactive because you were only specializing in maybe one thing, maybe 2 things. Whereas some of these other games, you can get 90% of everything that you want, and you cannot in Corinth. With that said, I don't think it's great. I don't know if it's even good. Essentially, the conceit is, do I take an action or do I use that die to move this steward around on a little map in the top right corner, which has a way to get cumulative points? I'm pretty disappointed, to be honest, from Days of Wonder. I love trying the new Days of Wonder release. Usually they only do 1 per year. I assume they're going to have another one this year. I hope. This feels like a get in on the roll and write train. It is a redo of a previous game as well, which I now need to look up if I'm going to say that.
Yispahan?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
it's
is?
a Y.
Okay. Yeah. Because when you guys were describing it, again, I didn't play it, but the way you were describing it sounds a lot like
interesting.
Yispahan.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Like exactly the same, like roll and write, or is it a re-implementation?
No, it's not a real. It's a standard board game from quite a while ago. I mean, I don't know board games in terms of like how old it is, but it's an older board game. In Yispahan, you're rolling dice, and you put the highest one on top, and you put the lowest on the bottom, and you work up this track. But it feels with Yispahan, it's much more of an area majority game.
Interesting.
I like Yispahan. In Yispahan, the dice rolling and action selection based on the dice rolling does strike me as always an interesting decision, whereas I believe when we spoke about this earlier, you said in Corinth, you felt like you always were going after the spot that had the most dice normally.
Yeah, and some of that's mitigated by, like Helen was saying, like it's more in your interest to specialize in a single good. So you wouldn't always be going, okay, now I'm getting silk, now I'm getting masks, now I'm getting this. But if you're down the silk road and there is a row that's 3 dice in silk, that's like a no-brainer decision, right? You would take that. And that kind of happened to me, what felt fairly frequently, where it was like, okay, this has a bunch of dice and the other ones have like 1 die each. So it feels like it would be silly not to take this.
Right.
Because even in the case of a good that you're not specializing in, if you get 4 dice in that section, you're getting a guaranteed block of points because you're filling out a block, getting those points. It just constantly felt to me like the decisions I was making were not interesting. I sort of half-jokingly commented there was a pretty insipid game like halfway through it. And maybe that's not fair, and I especially not after 1 play of it.
Did you, Kellen, have a similar feeling in terms of what you didn't like about the game, that there was not many interesting decisions?
Yeah, I think that there are those people who are happy to say that was a game. You know, we passed 20 minutes together and now we're on to something else, and all thumbs up all around and pleasant. But to me, that is sort of damning criticism. Nothing interesting happens, but it's fine. You know, it's the artwork is pretty. I enjoyed the physical production of it. The art is fun. Will I keep it? Absolutely not. Will I play it again? I hope not. It's hard because I feel out of touch with those people who say, yeah, I need a couple of games like that in my collection.
Yeah.
Because I don't need those games in my collection.
I want to dig into one thing, which is something that you said off air and not on the podcast yet, but you had sort of equated this to...
Are you going to go there?
I don't know. Am I?
I don't know.
You'd said that like it was like every other roll and write equally bad, equally as good as every other roll and write, which was like a point that I immediately jumped. I was like, that's insane. Like, I don't know that you necessarily are, you know, you obviously don't love roll and writes, but to me, like the gulf between this and something like Welcome To, which is probably my favorite in that genre, was massive.
Welcome To allows every player to choose the same thing.
Right.
And Corinth at least says, you get to go first, you get the most choice on this turn, and everyone else gets a little bit less. And in that way, it is more interactive.
And I think that sounds like the clincher. Like the more interactive game sort of balances that a little bit, which, you know, I think...
But Welcome To has a you know, much higher divergence of strategies available to you. It's also more mathy. So it's like in the realm of who can play Welcome To. You know, Welcome To is not being played by my mother.
Right.
And Corinth is.
Sure.
So if you need a gamer roll and write, what I would say to you is, what the are you doing with your time?
But even in that sort of like narrow scope, I think there are better games than Corinth. There are roll and writes that I would play with my mother, but I wouldn't buy Corinth for that purpose.
Second chance?
Yeah, exactly. Just like Second Chance.
You know, one of the interesting things about doing the podcast is that it's hard to talk about things that are so exceedingly mediocre. It's fun when you really hate something, and it's fun when you absolutely adore something.
Right.
And when you're stuck in this middle ground, it's like, what to say about Corinth? It looks cute, and it's dull.
Right.
Yeah.
That is Corinth by Days of Wonder.
Mark, how was your week in board gaming?
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment here to talk about Strategicon in general. We were doing a lot of this gaming. These guys played Corinth at Strategicon. Yeah, we had a nice turnout of Board Game Barrage fans that we got to play some games with, which was really fun. The math trade and virtual flea market was a zoo, as always. Kellen took some nice video of that you can see on the Instagram and Twitter. I got the chance to play Kalis with a couple guys on Friday night. I unfortunately had my niece's birthdays the next day, so I wasn't around for much of Saturday, but I know you guys got a chance to play with some folks for much of Saturday.
Yeah, Daniel, a friend of the podcast of the Game Table on Instagram, he taught me Anachrony, which is a game I'd been dying to play for a long time. So I played that with a couple of listeners and hopefully a new fan of the show. And that was great. I'll probably want to talk about that more at a future point once I've played it a couple more times maybe. But yeah, that was the highlight of my show for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, it was fun meeting members of our Discord, which is our chat room group where you can find us at any hour of the day. That is boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. And we organize games. I got to try Valley of the Kings Afterlife, which is a cool deck builder game. Obviously, we talked about Corinth already. I played some fun Japanese game that I brought called Valhalla Scout, which we will absolutely have to play. I got to play Now Boarding, which is Tim Fowers' real-time.
Oh, how was that?
It was good. The conceit is that you're trying to help planes get passengers to different destinations around the country, but it is a real-time... There's rounds, and then in a 3-player game, you have a 15-second timer to do everything. Okay. So the way in which it deals with like the quarterbacking of it is that you kind of all make a plan together, and then you start the timer, and you literally have to physically move things around fast enough, which is a weird way to get rid of that. I love the artwork. I think whoever Tim Fowers' artist is always knocks it out of the park. This is the creator of Burgle Bros. It's cute. It was fun. I mean, you know, my take on co-ops. It was a co-op.
Yeah.
But I thought it was charming, and for what it was, quite fun, quite enjoyable. So yeah, I think Strategicon was a huge success. It's always something we look forward to. Happens 3 times a year.
Can't wait for the next one already. Looking forward to the next math trade.
Yeah, Mark, we set up in the corner of the math trade area And people literally say, "Are you a store?" because of how many games we have. Or we post a picture on Instagram and people say, "What the literal what the hell is going on over there?" And it's Mark taking advantage of people. His Fireball Island.
Yep. Bought it for 30, played it, sold it for 90. Boom. That's the way you do it in the business.
That is a meta board game, folks. So before we move on to a featured topic, we want to read a review, as we always do. We're so appreciative of those who write in reviews, and you can review the podcast on iTunes. That's the best place to do it. You can also review it on Facebook or anywhere else you can leave a review. We're still waiting on our first Yelp review. I think that would be funny.
Still working on my spaghetti.
But your reviews of the podcast help spread awareness. But you can also tell a friend about the show. We kind of sprinkle business cards in all of Mark's games that he trades, so that's thousands of new listeners per week. This review comes to us from Jordan613. I think it's Jordan. There's a missing A. But this person is also a member of our Discord.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. The best board game podcast around. I listen to a lot of podcasts, including several on board games. BGB is bar none the most entertaining and informative. The chemistry of the host is a huge draw and makes waiting for every new episode exciting and excruciating in a good way. Subscribe and listen. You won't regret it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's just super positive. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jordan.
When people come up to us at conventions and say, you know, it's an awkward conversation, but it's super cool to hear that other people are getting value and enjoyment out of something that we just, get together on Sunday nights and yell at each other.
Yeah, for some random person to come up to me at the con and say they wanted to play Biblos with me was like such a thrill and so crazy. It was really cool.
And I think even Mark, someone on Instagram is now asking for your guidance on a trade.
Oh.
So they need you to help evaluate.
I'm happy to.
How much.
If you ever need help on trades or math trades, I am always thrilled to help.
But what am I the expert on? Like what would someone come to me for?
That's a good question. What is Neil an expert on? Voices?
Yeah,
Sound effects?
I'm just the voice talent.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this last week when we listened back to the episode. We decided you were the producer, you were the editor, and I'm definitely the talent. So that tracks.
All right, let us move on to our featured topic. The featured topic of the week is the nominees for the Spiel des Jahres, the Kennerspiel, and the Kinderspiel, which is for kindergartners.
How does a native German say that, Neelan?
As the native German at the table, Mark?
No, as a person who knows all languages.
We were actually debating this a little bit before. I want to say it's Spiel des Jahres, but I'm not sure if that's accurate at all.
So, the Spiel des Jahres is the family game award. The Kennerspiel is the sort of advanced family game. I think everyone looks at this list and always goes, this is the advanced award? These games aren't heavy. Yeah. I could teach my grandma to play this. So, let us not bury the lead. Let us just tell you what the nominees are, and then we will go section by section to discuss them. The nominees for the Spiel des Jahres this year are Just One, Werewords, and LAMA by legendary designer, the only true and living, Rainer Knizia. The first thing we want to do is briefly describe what these three games, our nominees for the Spiel des Jahres, are. Neelan, why don't you tell us about one?
Yeah, I can talk about Just One. This is a really simple game. I mean, you could almost describe the whole thing in 30 seconds. It's a game where one person at the table sort of closes their eyes and reveals a word to everyone else at the table. Then those people then choose a word that they write down on this little slate in secret. They all reveal them to each other. And if there are any duplicates of those words, they all both get eliminated. So you're left with only the unique clues of the table. Then the other person opens their eyes, they get shown all of the clues, and they have to guess what the word originally was that was given. And that's it. You keep doing this in a bunch of games. We've never done this for points, really. You just keep going around because it's a fun activity to play. Just One's a great game. I like it a lot. It's super simple. I feel it's fun. You can play it with basically any number of people. Like, it gets more or less chaotic and weird the more people are at the table, but in a good way. Like, you just have a lot of people clashing with each other and clues disappearing left, right, and center. It's always fun when you get down to like one clue, just as by virtue of other ones getting eliminated, and that person still manages to get the answer. It has a lot of good, big, fun moments like that.
Werewords is a hidden identity 20 questions game with a hidden traitor. Werewords has a fantastic app which helps select how difficult the words will be, but you are playing a series of 20 questions where the object could be tree, and then you're asking one player, is it a large object? Is it a small object? Except, similar to other werewolf-type games, there's a seer who knows what the hidden word is, and there is a werewolf who is trying to stop the table from getting to the word and also figure out who that seer is. So the seer is trying to subtly help through their questions, help the table get to the word while also being not too obvious so that the werewolf gets them. This is an interesting choice, in my opinion. My personal opinion is quite strong. This is very, very similar to a previously released Oink game called Insider, but with added layers of complexity, with the werewolf sort of motif thrown on top of it. I think unquestionably the app is the best way to play Werewords or Insider, and it's a great party game. I think it's a fantastic party game. But I would have to personally question whether I'd give that award to Insider for devising the concept or a game like Werewords for perhaps making it better.
Finally, we played a LAMA just a few moments ago before our game of Glorantha. Although it plays up to 6, this feels to me like the least party of the games that have been nominated. What you're doing in LAMA is the deck of cards are numbered 1 through 6 with a LAMA card as well. So you have cards that are 1 through 6, and then there are cards that have llamas on them. There is a face-up pile, and when it's your turn, you can do one of 3 things. You can play a card to the pile that is of that same number or one number higher. You can draw a card, or you can fold. When you play a card, you're playing either, say the card that is on the top of the pile is a 3. You can either play a 3 or a 4, so you're playing the same number or one higher. If you get to the highest number, which is 6, you can either play a 6 or you can play a llama. And sort of when you play a llama, it resets the number. So you can play another llama on top of that llama, or you can go back to a 1, and then you're just climbing up the ladder again. When you're taking a card from the deck, but you're not allowed to play a card, which sort of ties into the last thing you can do, which is to fold. When you fold, you are taking points, and all points in this game are negative, equal to the cards you folded based on their variety, not their number. So, for example, if you end up folding with 3 2s in your hand, you're only taking 2 negative points. You're not taking -6. If you are able to survive in this manner and get rid of all your cards, if you're able to play all your cards, then you are allowed to return one of these chips that you've received back into the supply. The chips come in 2 numbers. There's either a -1 or a -10. So if you've accumulated 10 negative points, you trade them in for a -10 chip. And then if you're able to play all your cards, you can elect to return that -10 chip. So that is sort of an interesting twist to the game, where when you get to -10, you're actually in an okay position, because if you're able to play all your cards, you can go back to 0. Our first game felt like it maybe dragged a little bit. We ended up ending it a little early. You're supposed to play till somebody hits -40, and we sort of decided when we were at -20 or so to end it. But I think I'd like to play it again a couple times. It seems fairly quick. So that's LAMA.
I think it was hurt desperately by not having that beautiful llama artwork.
Yes, we jerry-rigged it with the cards from Push,
which is a substantially better game in my opinion.
That's probably correct, yeah.
I'm kind of shocked that was nominated based on our hot take play of it. It felt like a lot of the decisions took place as to whether you would fold or not, and not really how you would get rid of your cards. And everything was negative, so it's one of those games where everyone's just losing. The best you can do is get 10 points back.
Right.
So who is going to win the Spiel des Jahres?
This is the one that we think is going to win, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got just one. We've got LAMA, and we've got Werewords.
Yeah. Are we going to count it down from 3 and say it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are. 3, 2, 1.
Just
one. Yeah.
We all agree on that?
I don't think that's the one I would
Okay,
pick.
so let's do that now. Let's do that. So we all agree that we think the winner is going to be just one. So let's count down who we think should win it of the 3. Ready?
3, 2, 1.
Werewords?
Just one.
I can't vote on this category. They're all
You think just one is not good enough to win it at all, or?
I'm half convinced that I've played Just One before in like 17 other games.
Yeah, the thing that surprises me about Just One is when you hear it, you think it's basically every other game of that type you play, but there is something subtle and unique about it that actually surprised me every time I play it. It's like there is something about the slight
It's
little
sort of-
permutation of those rules that actually works quite well.
Almost like code names. Like
Yeah.
code names, you sort of feel like you've played it before in some form, but not really.
Yeah.
That's true. I think that the co-op nature of it hurts me a little bit. You kind of end up playing it more like you play Telestrations, where the scoring doesn't matter and who cares. But Telestrations is a hell of a lot funnier than just one. In my mind, there's no tension in just one. Each individual round is delightful, and I enjoy playing it, and actually have ordered a copy of it, so I don't know why I'm refusing to vote.
Yeah. For me, Werewords is the much more interesting game of the three. I have similar misgivings to Callan about, whether Insider should be here instead of Werewords and that. That said, I also disagree with Callan. I do think Werewords is strictly better than Insider. And that's
Not even close.
And that's not an opinion I sort of came to immediately, because I wasn't sure that the added stuff was actually making the game better. But having played Werewords a few more times since then, I do enjoy all of the craft in Werewords.
We had to pause for 5 minutes to figure out how Werewords resolves itself because it's so complicated in comparison to
It's
Insider.
complicated if you ask someone to, like, off the top of their head recite it, but in practice it makes sense.
You're downplaying, but that's okay. We all downplay our faults, Neelan. Moving right along to the Kennerspiel des Jahres. As a reminder, the Kennerspiel is the heavier enthusiast category, but it's probably lighter than you're imagining when you hear the word heavy and enthusiast. The three nominees are Carpe Diem by Stefan Feld, Detective by Ignacy Trzewiczek, and Wingspan by Elizabeth Hargrave.
Great pronunciation of Ignacy's name, by the way.
I think it was okay, right?
It was great.
It was
No,
great.
legitimate.
It was
It was Neil and Ash.
100%. Yeah.
It's one of those things where you never say it out loud.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then you're like,
You
in
hear
your
it.
mind, you hear it right.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, is this going to come out? And it did. Nailed the landing. So let us describe briefly what these games are.
Wingspan is a game by Stonemaier Games and Elizabeth Hargrave. It is a beautiful production about a game where you're sort of collecting an aviary of birds, for lack of a better word. These birds sort of fall 3 different territories, and they give different abilities based on the card that you choose. You're collecting resources in the form of food and eggs. You spend that food, you spend those eggs, you place them on your bird, and you're sort of building sort of these sort of chains of command. So whenever you sort of execute that action, you also execute all of the birds that are in that row in reverse order. So you're kind of building these little sort of machines of this little assembly line of bird actions. And then as you get more and more, it gets more and more powerful. And then towards the end of the game, the joy is in like hitting that action over and over again and just doing your chain of actions repeatedly. That's Wingspan.
Detective is a game from Ignacy Trzewiczek and Portal Games. It is a case-style game where there are 5 cases you are solving. You're using clues, trying to solve the mystery of Detective. Detective is not a game that I have actually played. It is a game I have purchased, and I'm excited to get to the table. One of the central interesting conceits is that you can actually use the internet to search for answers to things within the case. They've either set up the Wikipedia articles that sort of connect with it, and or they just know what's on the internet, and that helps investigate the crime that's happening. One of the reasons I'm excited to try Detective is that there is a LA crime expansion for Detective, and I'm a sucker for that theme, a la, like a Drive film. I get excited about that, and so I'm hoping to like the base game. The reviews are definitely mixed on Detective, with some criticizing the writing as being over the top or kind of annoying, but I don't typically read that much of the flavor text anyway, so I'm hoping that the mystery and the whodunit is fun enough in the solving of it mechanically. So that is Detective.
Carpe Diem is a game by Stefan Feld. It's also, as most Feld games are, a point salad. What you're doing in this game is you are going around a rondel, picking up tiles to place on your board. The tiles represent fields, and when you complete a field, you get goods from the field. So you might complete a grape field, or you might complete like a pond to get fish. And then at the end of every round, of which there are 4, you place a marker on another board where you can claim victory points based on goods you exchange. So there might be a space on the board that scores points for every pair of fish and grapes you return. So during the course of the round, you're trying to acquire the goods to score them at the end of the round. And one sort of interesting twist is once you have claimed one of these scoring cards, there are limited chances for other people to score them. So you're basically trying to acquire the goods and jump on these scoring spots before you get closed out. That's basically Carpe Diem.
All right, so we're going to count down which game we think should win the Kennerspiel des Jahres.
Now this
Which is what we think is going to win.
this is what we're going to win.
This is what we think is going to win. Yes.
Yes. Count us down.
3, 2, 1.
Wingspan. Okay, and what we think should win.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1. Wingspan.
Carpe Diem?
Wait, what?
I think Carpe Diem is a better game than Wingspan. I think it should win.
I think you're half right. So I played Carpe Diem as well, and I actually didn't love it.
Okay.
It was sort of in the broad categorization of Feld games that I just didn't take to for whatever reason. It reminded me of Castles of Burgundy, and I didn't love it.
Okay.
Wingspan is a game I like, and I mean it's hard to say with based in Detective having not played it, but I kind of feel this of the three, Wingspan makes the most sense for me.
You think of those three games, again, with the caveat we have played Detective.
With the caveat that I haven't played Detective, so let's say between Wingspan and Carpe Diem, I think I would pick Wingspan. Yeah.
I mean, I think Detective has the most upside potential in this conversation.
Yeah.
But is it good? Because Stefan Feld released a Stefan Feld game with the ugliest box cover I think he's done in years. So congratulations, Stefan. Wingspanner as a production, is Carpe Diem a better game than Wingspan? I have not played Carpe Diem, but I hope it's better because we're giving the Kennerspiel to Wingspan. Kennerspiel as a production, if we're awarding more than
That's true.
That's part of the argument.
Okay, that's a
the
good
production value of Wingspan. It's a lot of it, to be perfectly honest.
Because these spiels are supposed to sort of be like nods to family gaming. It's supposed to be more than just about the game itself. The production is supposed to, I think, be part of the whole deal. So yeah, with that in mind, I think the argument for Wingspan makes sense.
I actually think that this is probably the most boring year we have had. I think Just One and Wingspan are going to win, no question. And I'm willing to go, record this and then get called a dummy when that doesn't happen, but there's just no way. The extended list of recommended titles for the Kennerspiel des Jahres. Paper Tales.
Yeah.
A fantastic card drafting game. Newton. No comment. Lowlands.
Sure.
Okay.
And Architects of the West Kingdom.
Oh,
that's
favorite.
the winner right there.
Favorite.
Yeah. Jeez, why are we even still doing this?
Interesting. So, of those four, Kellen, I know you did not like Newton and you hated West Kingdom. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but you like Paper Tales and you sort of like Lowlands. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, of those two, what did you like the most?
Paper Tales.
And I'm guessing you would give it to Paper Tales. If Paper Tales was included as a foursome, would you give it to Paper Tales? And again, we haven't played Detective, so that's a tough.
Of course, these are just so not how I would do awards in any world.
No.
Paper Tales is like, are we giving it the Oscar for Best Picture right now? It's like, well, no. We're about to award,
The Germans are forcing you to pick of these four games. What do you pick?
Yeah, I would pick Paper Tales above it personally because I actually would keep it.
Neil, of those four, have you played?
Of those, Lowlands was the only one I played.
Okay, and so would you give it to Lowlands over Wingspan?
Yes. Of the two that I played from the actual selection and Lowlands takes it for me.
Yeah, wow. And the only one I've played of those four is Lowlands, and I would give it to Lowlands over Carpe Diem or Wingspan. But for me to even say I would give Lowlands the Kennerspiel seems like, wow.
I think for what it's worth, you would both enjoy Newton.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
It's just a, Euro efficiency game for the sake of Euro efficiency games for me.
Yeah.
There is also the award for Baby's First Spiel des Jahres, otherwise known as the Kinderspiel.
But this is not Baby's First as a pejorative. This is literally like Baby's First, right? This is a kid's game.
Baby's First, not a pejorative. And the short list is Fabulantica.
Ah, yes.
Go, Gecko, go! ! That's my favorite. And Paul der Wickinger.
Oh, yeah.
The Wickinger.
Yeah.
On the cover of that
is Paul der Wickinger.
Is a Viking with some barrels and a girl Viking with some more barrels.
Nice.
But Go Gecko Go is definitely the winner.
In our hearts.
Yeah.
We don't need to count it down. I'm showing it to
man.
Neil.
Yeah, that one wins.
He's blushing. And let's not even talk about the extended list because there's 7 more recommendations and I don't recognize any of them. That is going to do it for our featured discussion on the Spiel des Jahres and the Kennerspiel and the Kinderspiel. We will, of course, follow up once we know the winners, Wingspan and Just One.
We'll hopefully have played Detective by then.
Yeah, we hope to have played Detective by then, and I hope it's great, to be honest, because it sounds innovative and interesting, and I want to get some LA crime.
Yeah, and it's a pity because I really, there was a point in time where this was one of the games I was the most excited for, and I was just dampened by the response to it, but I would love to play it, absolutely.
So as we always do, let us quickly go around and say what we are excited about in the world of board gaming for the upcoming week.
I'm going to stick to the Strategicon talk that we've been having. I'm most excited about tomorrow's auction. So there is a board game auction tomorrow to close out Strategicon. I will be going to that as I've done for the last couple of years. And I'll probably go on Discord and talk about some of the highlights and lowlights and maybe what I've sold and the games that sold big. So if you're interested in hearing more about what goes on in a board game auction, follow us on the Discord, boardgamebarrage.com/Discord.
For reasons not really worth going into, my Gloomhaven game stalled for a few weeks, but we're back on track and playing Gloomhaven, so I'm excited to get back into that. We're sort of heading towards the end game of the campaign at this point, so I'm very excited to see where that goes.
So you're picking up the expansion?
Probably not. I think we sort of group decided that maybe we will hold off on more Gloomhaven, at least for the time being, and once we finish the campaign, that is. Yeah, I mean, we've done 30-odd scenarios of it at this point, and just time becomes a factor.
Yeah.
Like, it gets harder and harder to play with any regularity.
30 games. You can't complain about 30 games.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
By any metric,
Yeah.
that's value for money
Absolutely.
right there.
I am most excited about a game coming to Board Game Barrage. That game is Super Punch Fighter from Plaid Hat Games. This game is a 1 to 6 player, free-for-all, Super Smash Bros. Clone in board game format. I am always looking for a Wiz War replacement, a game that is just about punching on your friends and having a quick skirmish conflict game. So when something says, I'm like Super Smash Bros., I am excited about it.
That's awesome. Sounds really cool.
Thanks so much for joining us on another episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. We'd absolutely love it if you join the Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord, where you can disagree with us, you can argue with us, you can support us, as long as you use the red tank emoji.
Add a blue tank emoji now.
What a horrible choice. And she's already left, so I can say that now, but thank you guys so much. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on our website, boardgamebarrage.com. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook. You can email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com. As always, a huge thank you to Heart Society Music for their fantastic song, What's on Your Mind, Kid, from their album Wake the Queens. I can tell you, I say to Christina at least once a day, what's on your mind, kid? Thanks so much for listening in. Bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. With me, as always, are my co-hosts, Neelan, the orange tank, Mark, the green tank, and Callan, the red tank.
Callan Allen.
Callan Allen. Yeah.
That's good.
And we will be getting one of them live someday in the future. I don't know. It just sounded right. Like burning it? I don't know.
Wait,
What? What are you saying?
Kind of like a public execution. So in like 6 months, we're going to burn one live on YouTube.
Oh.
I don't know. It sounds kind of cool, huh?
Yep.
People would like that.
Told you guys, I'm not going to be in your stupid podcast. Okay, bye.
Okay. Stop talking.
Oh, yeah. How do you guys usually sign off?
So long.
Oh, yeah. So long. Okay, bye.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I was.
Shit.
Oh my god.
Well, you're done.